Senator Joe Lieberman is stepping aside. We talk about how his departure will affect Connecticut and look at the quickly growing lineup of candidates to fill his seat. Welcome to The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. The past week was filled with political drama and is giving us a peek at an interesting next few years on the campaign trail, with our senior senator announcing he'll step aside and scores of would-be replacements lining up. First, we take a look at Senator Joe Lieberman's announcement.
Some would call it classic Joe Lieberman, the senator giving a speech part scholarly, part sentimental, drawing on Mark Twain, quoting Psalms and Ecclesiastes, and explaining his decision to not run for re-election.
At the end of this term, I will have served 24 years in the U.S. Senate and 40 years in elective office. By my count, I've run at least 15 full-fledged campaigns, and that's just in Connecticut, not counting the national campaigns I was involved in. So, for me, it is time for another season and another purpose under heaven.
Despite speculation about the threat of aggressive opponents, Senator Lieberman says tough campaigns are nothing new and nothing intimidating, noting his close re-election in 2006 against Ned Lamont at the height of controversy over Iraq War.
I have never shied from a good fight, and I never will.
Not even, one could say, when it made a once exceedingly popular senator and a former vice presidential nominee unpopular. His support of the Iraq War, his support of John McCain over President Obama, his speech at the Republican National Convention, moments of controversy that he today acknowledged and explained.
Along the way, I have not always fit comfortably into conventional political boxes. Maybe you've noticed that. Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative, because I've always thought that my first responsibility is not to serve a political party, but to serve my constituents, my state, and my country, and then to work across party lines to make sure good things get done for them.
Senator Lieberman says he'll continue the battle now for Connecticut and the country.
I will keep doing everything in my power to build strong bridges across party lines, to keep our country safe, to win the wars we are in, and to make sure America's leadership on the world stage is principled and strong.
Here to talk about Senator Lieberman's decision, his legacy, and his future, reporter Christine Stewart of CTNewsJunkie.com, current reporter Daniela Altamari, and managing director of Tremont Public Advisors, Matt Hennessy. Thanks, all of you, for being here. We have a lot to talk about. I guess let's just start off with what your impressions were of the speech and the tone that Senator Lieberman gave that day.
Well, I mean, you know, it was... he was stepping down. He's retiring. You know, he's had his day. And as Matt had said the day that he announced, he probably could have won a re-election campaign as an independent. But his time is done, and people were, I think, appreciate that politicians aren't hanging on past their prime.
Right.
You do think he could have won?
That Matt thinks that he could have won.
Yeah, no,
we'll let Matt take that one.
No, I think that part of his process, which started a few months ago, was to take a look at how is it that you could win this upcoming race, and many of his supporters and advisors mapped out a way that he could win as an independent candidate. However, he had to make that choice, which is, am I going to spend the next 2 years focused doing politicking, or am I going to work on maybe getting something done in the Senate that's really important for the country?
Right.
So for those who said, well, you know, he was a tough race, people remember he took on, when he first ran, he took on the majority leader of the Connecticut Senate in his first race out of the box, took on Lowell Weicker, and he had a comeback performance in 2006. So tough races don't scare him, but I think he's looking at another phase of his public service career.
So, Daniela, you didn't think he would win?
Well, I'm not sure. You did say something interesting, though, about, you know, sort of the final 2 years. You know, Chris Dodd had an incredible final last year, incredibly productive on legislation. So, you know, perhaps we'll see that with Lieberman as well. As for whether he could win, I'm not sure. I think the math would have been really difficult. But.
Right. So yeah, he did. He mentioned that this will give him time to focus on really getting some things done. What do you think his focus will be?
Well, I think you're going to see a few things. I mean, he's definitely going to be interested in some additional homeland security issues, internet issues, cybersecurity issues. He definitely wants to do more work on global climate change. So I think you're going to see that. And there's going to be a few of the defense issues that he's going to be very interested in. But I think in the next few weeks we're going to hear more about the specifics of what he would like to accomplish.
Right. Well, he referenced himself. He alluded to kind of his fractured relationship with both parties, all parties. How much damage do you think that he did in the last few years to, because he was, when I first got here, he was this exceedingly popular senator.
Well, I think people who worked on his 2006 campaign actually said that he paid a political price for his independence. And he paid the political price for his independence, and then 2 years later he went on to support Senator John McCain's presidential bid against Barack Obama, which the Democrats here didn't quite censure him for, but came close to. And I think that really put him out of favor. I mean, we had the stories from way back when where they were taking the photo of him down from Democratic State Central. So he fell out of favor. But I really think he's kind of a man without a party.
I think that's why it would have been difficult for him to win. I think you're right, exactly right, Christine. His role in the 2008 presidential election, the reports that he was coaching Sarah Palin during debates. I mean, this was a man who was the Democratic nominee for vice president, just a very short time before, and then he's, going over to the other side. Some of the things he said about President Obama, I think those really bothered a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, I think that clearly those are some things that caused some big rifts with Connecticut Democrats. But at the same time, and he alluded to it in his speech, which was there are very few Democrats left who are strong on national defense, care a lot about issues like civil rights and the environment. And the party itself has taken kind of a different tack, becoming more I think uniform in a lot of what many folks would say a uniform progressive approach across national and domestic issues. So in one sense, the party was pivoting away from him, and he was, I think, had an ideology that was an old Democratic ideology, but it was one that, a lot of moderates still support. So I think that was a big challenge for him, too.
Yeah, I think the last time we spoke, and we talked about how he had kind of angered a lot of Democrats or a lot of people, and you said perhaps that perception was more than it actually was.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think if you look at the average voter, I think that there's the folks who are the chattering classes in the Democratic Party who got themselves worked up into a major froth. But I think if he had made the decision to run again, I think he would have done a very good job of reminding people why they voted for him many times, both as a Attorney General and as a U.S. Senator. So I think that has been overplayed in kind of the media, but it doesn't deny the fact that there were some real rifts as a result of the McCain, in particular the McCain issue. Right.
He also said in that speech that he would not be the end of his career in public service. I mean, he didn't specify. Any thoughts on what you think where that might take place or how?
I mean, I think he really enjoys national defense and somewhere in the national defense arena. Some people have even gone as far to say, defense secretary. And some people have said, maybe a special envoy to the Middle East and, could fit in a lot of capacities.
What are you hearing, Danielle?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, John McCain was, I think, the one who was promoting that. He's also very devoted to this idea of, the no labels movement, the, bipartisanship, and we'll see where that goes, but that is something that he has said he's going to be devoting, part of the next 2 years to, and maybe beyond. So,
right, I heard someone at that announcement said to me they could see him getting an appointment from President Obama, or maybe becoming a college president. Matt, what do you think?
I think one thing that we ought to look at is it possible that he may be tapped for the U.S. Supreme Court? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there's a question about, what her health situation is in the long term, and he was approached actually by President Clinton about being on the Supreme Court in that era. He's one of the few people in the next 2 years who could actually get Senate confirmation to be a Supreme Court justice. So I wouldn't be surprised if that came into the mix at some point.
Right. So,
and he was actually close with President Obama when he mentored.
Right, he was his mentor when then Senator Obama came into the Senate. Absolutely. So, and he's done a lot for the Obama administration behind the scenes in ways that helped deliver Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But even in the health care debate, where a lot of Democrats are upset with him on the public option issue, the White House at the end of the day said, his taking that stance allowed them to convince the rest of the caucus they had to go with what they had and pass it.
Right. So kind of made up, do you think, for his support of McCain to the president?
I don't know if anyone ever makes up after that, but he is clearly a valuable asset to the administration in his role in the Senate, no question.
All right. Good. All right. Those are good things we've been talking about. Up next, the race is on already. We're going to continue our discussion and talk about who's in it to win it 20 months out.